This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. Well, Donald Trump has a way of stunning the world and keeping leaders on their toes. Of all the solutions being put forward to bring peace to the Middle East, this is without doubt one of the most bold and ambitious ideas that has ever been put on the table.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
In that press conference with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Trump declared that the US will own and rebuild Gaza, turning it into the Riviera of the Middle East. Now, the US will be responsible for dismantling bombs, and the 1.8 million Palestinians will be relocated as Gaza is being rebuilt, which could take between 10 to 15 years. Now, as you'd expect, the left is going into meltdown over this, while Israelis are celebrating the clear support that they're receiving from the Trump administration, which involves a plan that would no longer see Hamas terrorists controlling the Gaza Strip. Terrorists who've been vowing to repeat October 7 attacks. Now, this extraordinary plan by Donald Trump would reshape the future of the Middle East. But is Trump serious? Well, possibly. But what he is definitely serious about is showing the world what leadership looks like. He's signalling to Arab leaders that there's an economic opportunity here and that they need to get on board. This is most likely a negotiating tactic by Trump to push countries such as Jordan, Egypt and Saudi Arabia to come to the table to find a real and long-lasting solution in Gaza, because it's never going to work with Hamas in control. And although it might be a wild concept, without these bold moves and big ideas, what action would we be seeing being taken? None. Only now that Donald Trump is in, we're seeing hostages finally return home. And there are real conversations happening behind the scenes to bring peace to the Middle East. For those freaking out about the concept that may or may not take place, just remember that Donald Trump campaigned on being an anti-war president, and that is what we're getting. Another key part of Trump's campaign was his promise to clean out the swamp and to cut out taxpayer dollars that are going to waste. And what's being exposed at USAID is shocking. What started as an initiative to provide foreign aid has become a corrupt organisation that spends US money on radical left issues. Here is Caroline Levitt highlighting some of the waste.
$1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either.
And it doesn't stop there. $2 million for sex changes in Guatemala, $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt, $20 million on a Sesame Street show in Iraq, $4.5 million to combat disinformation in Kazakhstan. It is hard to fathom and it's hard to keep up. The latest bombshell is that the left-wing media outlet Politico has been raking in millions and millions of dollars from USAID.
I was made aware of the funding from USAID to media outlets, including Politico, who I know has a seat in this room. And I can confirm that the more than 8 million taxpayer dollars that have gone to essentially subsidizing subscriptions to Politico on the American taxpayer's dime will no longer be happening. The DOJ team is working on canceling those payments now.
What a scandal. Now, if you need reminding of what Politico is, it's spent the last 10 years essentially campaigning against Donald Trump and trying to destroy the MAGA movement. And isn't it interesting that Politico is the news outlet that claimed the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation, which was one big lie. and a significant lie as it was published just as Americans were weeks away from voting for either Donald Trump or Joe Biden in the 2020 election. What is being exposed with USAID is really dark. It's not just funding a media outlet that promotes lies, funding woke DEI programs around the world. USAID handed over tens of millions of US taxpayer dollars to scientists in Wuhan to do gain-of-function research, which, as we know, likely led to a lab leak and the outbreak of COVID-19 that killed millions of people and led to a world shutdown that took away our freedoms. If you've been following closely, you've probably been feeling the outrage for some time. But for those who've been trusting mainstream media outlets that don't really tell you what's going on and are just learning about where their taxpayer dollars have been going to for the first time, projects that has not only not helped US citizens but actually harmed them, would surely be congratulating Donald Trump and Elon Musk right now for shining a big bright light on the corruption that has been taking place at USAID. But what do the Democrats think? Well, they'd rather US tax dollars continue to be wasted on DEI and dangerous projects overseas and keep the truth hidden. Here is Chuck Schumer making some noise about this.
Behind closed doors, take away our privacy, take away our dollars, take away everything we have. We are going to fight this fight. I am going to stand with you in this fight, and we will win. 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 We won't rest. We won't rest.
Gosh, he knows how to make you cringe. But it's not just Chuck Schumer. The pile-on against Elon Musk and his brilliant work continues. And what's the Democrats' go-to strategy to smear those they don't agree with? Oh, that's right, call them a Nazi.
We will see you in the courts, in Congress, in the streets. Elon Musk is a Nazi nutball baby.
Hillary Clinton is joining in on this too, claiming that Elon Musk is a mounting blitzkrieg-style administrative coup on the US government. Now, the Democrats are more irrelevant than ever before. Call me cynical, but I doubt these empty and ugly attacks are going to help them claw back any support. Surely there can only be relief that finally we have people willing to go through the books to cut taxpayer waste. But what's being uncovered with USAID may just be the tip of the iceberg. Joining us is Adam Crichton, columnist at The Australian. Adam, thank you so much for joining us and welcome home. You spent years in Washington, DC. Have you ever witnessed such a rapid change that we're really seeing take place right now?
No, look, certainly I haven't. I mean, not in my journalistic career of 13 years at this stage have I ever seen such a flurry of change in such a short period of time. I mean, you know, the COVID era, of course, was pretty spectacular in 21 and 2020, but this is pretty intense. It's not just in the health field, of course, it's in economics, it's in foreign policy. I mean, Trump is just this extraordinary historical force, if you like, who, you know, by the way, 2 years ago was completely written off. But of course has had this spectacular comeback. He's now president and he's been in office a very short time and just done an extraordinary and controversial number of things.
Absolutely. We're seeing that right now. Just yesterday, Donald Trump announced that he sees US ownership of Gaza as a long-term prospect. Now, he made those comments during his first meeting with Israel's Prime Minister, and he sent shockwaves around the world. Adam, is Trump serious about this? How do you see this playing out?
Well, look, it's very hard to know. I mean, certainly the announcement was absolutely spectacular and historic, and I think very few people were expecting it, and I think half the world is still trying to digest it. But look, if we just go to a week earlier, or a few days earlier with the tariffs on Canada and Mexico, there was a lot of fanfare and they never happened. So this may be something like that. It might be an opening gambit to get a broader agreement in the Middle East amongst the Arab nations and also Israel. But certainly, I think, you know, I mean, I can't see it happening personally. I think it's going to be very, very hard for the US to take ownership of Gaza unless it wants to endure loss of soldiers. I mean, there will obviously be terrorism if they try to take it, and it's going to be very difficult to forcibly remove 2 million people or 1.7 million people. So I think it's a very difficult task, and of course it goes against what Trump actually ran on, which was, to pull the US out of foreign entanglements. This is the complete opposite, of course, and so you do see on social media and amongst his base a lot of disappointment in this announcement.
It's interesting you mentioned the tariffs. So I thought of that as well, that it's just a couple of days after Trump made those announcements about threatening tariffs of 25% to Canada, to Mexico, and then just shortly after that announcement, Trump essentially got what he wanted. Mexico and Canada announced that they'd finally start taking action to stop fentanyl flowing into the United States. And so the tariffs have been paused for a month. So I guess the world is kind of seeing the way Donald Trump works, how he's able to bring other countries to the negotiating table. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, look, I think that is how I see it. And he also claims it as a big political win, both against Canada and also Mexico. And I guess to some extent that's true. He threatened them with something and then they changed their behaviour. Well, at least they're saying that they're going to change their behaviour in some way. And of course, we saw the same just a week earlier with Colombia. Of course, he threatened them too, and they quickly changed their mind within 7 hours about accepting their citizens back. So I think we're going to see a pattern of this throughout his presidency, and let's hope Australia doesn't get brought into this, but maybe it will at some point. Who knows? I mean, he doesn't seem to really care much about tradition and about traditional alliances. That's part of the Trump phenomenon. It's a move away from that, from what a lot of politicians used to call the rules-based global order. Well, that is certainly over now. I mean, Trump doesn't really care anything for that, and I think you won't be hearing politicians talk about it anymore because it's too embarrassing.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says that the mainstream media just can't keep up with the good news flowing out of President Trump's White House. Here she is.
There is so much good news, so much winning out of the Trump White House right now that the mainstream legacy media can't keep up with it because President Trump is signing executive order after executive order, delivering on promise after promise, and implementing fundamental change of our bloated bureaucracy and our corrupt government here in Washington, D.C. He was given a once-in-a-generation mandate by the American people to govern and to fundamentally transform Washington, and that's exactly what he is doing.
In a way, she's right. There have been so many news lines, so many major announcements, and it just shows you how prepared Trump is to be making these. It feels like he's about 10 steps ahead of everyone else. But Donald Trump is also shaking up the way the media is being run inside the White House. He's open to having podcasters and content creators allowed in the briefing room. You've spent a bit of time there. What do you make of this decision?
Well, look, of course, it reflects the simmering hatred of the Trump people for the traditional media. So I think it's damaging for the legacy media in the US that they're going to have more competition in the briefing room. The briefing room itself is actually very small. I mean, people see the press secretary speak on TV, but very rarely does the camera turn around. It's a small room; not everyone can fit in. And so I think by allowing these other podcasters and influencers and so forth in, and I'm not saying it's a bad decision, but it just physically means that fewer legacy media types will be physically allowed in the room because they're going to have to be on a rotation now. So I think it's bad for legacy media, but this is hardly surprising. And just on the pace of the decisions, I mean, I was actually in DC for the first week or so of his first presidency, and that was largely chaos and nothing happened at all. So the contrast with this is extreme. As you say, he's so well prepared. And I think the quality of people around him and the determination of people around him and the cohesion is much greater this time, and you're seeing the results of that.
Absolutely. And in a sign that's not good for legacy media, it's been revealed today that USAID was handing over millions of dollars to the left-wing media outlet Politico. Look, I was shocked to hear this morning. What's your reaction?
Yeah, look, I was shocked too. It's just so embarrassing. I mean, it really is. I mean, the mainstream media, let's be frank, large swathes of it have been very embarrassed by pushing things that have turned out to be wrong, whether it's the laptop, whether it's, various aspects of COVID. And now it comes out that the Democratic arm of the US state, if you like, this agency called USAID, which has been propping up various institutions all around the world that are very closely aligned to the Democratic Party. They were also giving money to this media giant, which is owned, it's called Politico in the US, but it's owned by Axel Springer, which is a big German publisher. And Politico also happens to be fairly rabidly anti-Trump. So it's a very, very bad look, and I think it'll have ramifications, widespread ramifications, this.
I think so indeed. Now, podcaster Joe Rogan has blasted Kamala Harris's team for essentially lying about why Kamala Harris never went on the Joe Rogan podcast. They came up with plenty of excuses, like the date clashed with when Donald Trump was recording his, but Joe Rogan has called them out for their BS. Here he is.
No one ever committed to doing it. This is like really important because they keep pretending that I lied or I did this or I did that. They never committed to doing it. Well, we went through, I've got a whole, we have all the receipts, by the way.
Of course.
I have a whole list of conversations that took place. They never said she was going to do it. So this whole idea that we her over and then we over for Trump, incorrect, just not true.
Adam, I don't think it's a smart move to lie about anyone or anything, but especially when it involves someone like Joe Rogan, who has such an enormous reach.
Yeah, look, that's certainly true, but it's kind of no surprise to me that she didn't want to go on that show because she couldn't have handled it. I think she wanted to lead him on and to keep her name in the media and to have people wonder about the prospect of her being on the podcast. But of course, she couldn't do it. I mean, it's a long form interview, and we all know she did very few of those. Indeed, her strategy for the first couple of months from when she was leader was not to do any media at all. And then when she started doing more media, her favorability ratings fell fairly rapidly. So look, I mean, I think if she had have done it, I think it would have been even worse, the result of the election. So, for Democrats, I mean. So yeah, but look, it is embarrassing, all the lying and stuff. And, the curious thing, I don't know why Joe Rogan didn't say this before the election, but anyway, it's, he said it now, and, I suppose it's not surprising.
Yeah, it's not surprising. I wonder if the offer is still on the table. I'm not sure if she's still up to a 3-hour interview with Joe Rogan. I'm not sure how many people would listen to it either. But what's your take on the future of the Democrats? It just feels like they're more irrelevant than ever.
Yeah, look, I think the party's been severely wounded. I mean, the reality is their political strategy for many presidential elections has been to appeal to all the minority groups, if you like, and of course women too, even though they're not a minority, but that they're kind of, bucketed as one. And, Trump had swings towards him amongst all these groups, every single one. And so I think, trying to curry favor with Black Americans or Hispanic Americans, I think this is over. And so there's an existential crisis for the Democrat Party, I think. And also some of the stuff they're saying now is still so unhinged and out of touch with American people. Like I just read today that some of them are going to try to impeach Trump. This is, this playbook did not work. You tried this many times. You tried the lawfare and, he won in a landslide. So they really need a new political playbook going forward. I think it's going to take at least a year to work out what that is.
They really do. I think that playbook actually helped Donald Trump, but they haven't learnt the lesson. Look, finally, Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi has been confirmed. Here she is during the confirmation hearing.
Can I answer the question?
Well, my question
I would have plenty of staff. You said, of course you want.
You'll be able to review hundreds of cases on the first day?
I'm not going to mislead this body nor you.
All right, let me ask another question. You don't want to answer that. Let me ask another question.
You were censured by Congress, Senator, for comments just like this that are so reckless.
Pam Bondi is getting straight to work. She's already ordered the DOJ to pause all federal funding for sanctuary cities. So those cities that refuse to cooperate with federal immigration authorities will potentially be cut off. Adam, what's your assessment of this?
Well, look, I think this was just always virtue signaling in the first place. I mean, we saw when the Republican governors in southern states, in Florida and in Texas, started to send to bus and fly thousands of illegal immigrants to Chicago and to New York and to various other so-called sanctuary cities, that they didn't want these people. And so it's just all nonsense. And so, I think what the US federal government's going to do makes sense. I mean, they shouldn't be funding virtue signaling. So, if states individually want to pay for this nonsense for these various centres and so forth, you let them. But I don't see why the federal government should be helping. And as for the new Attorney General, I mean, she performed extremely well in her hearings, which you just saw some of then. And I think, she's going to do a good job, I think.
I think so too. Adam Crichton, great to chat to you again. Thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour.
Thanks, Gabrielle.
Joining us now from New York is spokeswoman for American Values PAC, Caitlin Sinclair. Caitlin, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with RFK Jr. He's advanced to the next step in his effort to become Trump's Health and Human Services Secretary. He's seen as one of the more controversial figures, but my goodness, does he have a lot of support for just being willing to stand up against Big Pharma, the food industry. He's dared to call for more testing on certain vaccines. And Donald Trump continues to show his support for RFK Jr. He posted on Truth Social yesterday, 20 years ago, autism in children was 1 in 10,000. Now it's 1 in 34. Wow, something is really wrong. We need Bobby. Thank you. Look, it's amusing to see just the freak out and meltdowns from the left over RFK Jr., but I suspect we're going to get a lot more truth and a lot more answers to questions that no one was willing to ask with Bobby in. Can you give us a sense of what we're in for when he's confirmed?
Absolutely. Well, here's the thing about a pick like RFK Jr. It is exactly who Americans voted for. They voted for the real disruptors, and that's exactly what Bobby plans to do. He plans on being a disruptor. He plans on being a disruptor to big food, to big pharma, to all of these three-letter agencies. And this is what the American people wanted. When they voted Donald Trump as president, they voted for an Elon Musk. They voted for a Tulsi Gabbard. They voted for an RFK Jr. They voted for a Kash Patel. They voted for all of these individuals that are it's a package deal. They're really the new coalition, the new parts of this coalition to our party. And by our party, I mean the Unity Party. That is the party that RFK Jr. decided to unite and join and create with President Donald Trump. And that's why it was so popular amongst Americans. That's why we had 7 for 7 in the swing states. Coming anywhere close to getting in the way of these confirmations is basically saying that it's insulting to the American people.
Absolutely, he is a disruptor. And I think what we have, or what we're seeing at the moment with Trump and the people around him, it's like we're getting a revolution because we have so many disruptors. On RFK Jr., stocks for Pfizer and Moderna have plummeted following the Senate Finance Committee's advancement of RFK Jr.'s HHS nomination. What does that tell you?
Well, has anyone checked Nancy Pelosi's stock portfolio today? That's the first thing that comes to mind. Why would, when a logical person thinks about this, why would pharmaceutical companies whose goal involves making people's lives better and healthier, why would their stock drop when we're trying to confirm the nominee for Health and Human Services Secretary, a role that would maybe help their job every day, help their goal, which is to make Americans healthier. So it really makes you question what the real goal is, make money off of illness. Here's the truth, Gabriella. Mr. Kennedy, he has awakened the consciousness of Americans about the need to end the chronic disease epidemic. And that's what this is really about. Chronic disease affects 50% of the population in America right now. And some people are very threatened by that promise to end that epidemic. We effectively really have one chronic disease in this country, and that is terrible metabolic disease and metabolic dysfunction. And RFK Jr. has promised to tackle all of that. What that reveals and what that actually shows in is all of the disease we see, like obesity, diabetes, liver disease, heart disease, stroke. It all stems from metabolic dysfunction. Again, chronic disease, that is the promise that RFK has made to combat and totally destroy chronic disease in this country. Both him and President Trump have taken the two most powerful industries, which is big food and big pharma, and they have promised to battle against them. And so far, they are winning. And I would ask your viewers, who do you think that's a win for? It's for us, and it's for our future and for our future children.
Absolutely. And finally, we have reason to be optimistic that the future is going to be brighter, that Americans are at a point where they can get healthier again. So can the world. Let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard. It's appearing as though she's heading towards confirmation as well. The Senate Intelligence Committee narrowly advanced Tulsi Gabbard's nomination to oversee the nation's intelligence agency. Now, she still needs to clear a full Senate vote to win confirmation, but she's also seen as another controversial appointment, or as you put it, a disruptor. What's your assessment of Tulsi? What are we going to expect from her?
Yeah, again, so hearing from anyone, hearing from Democrats who, by the way, not a single Democrat voted for Tulsi Gabbard or RFK Jr. I find that appalling. These were two lifelong Democrats. I think that puts into perspective who we're currently dealing with when it comes to the Democrat Party. But again, this is a mandate from the American people. When they voted for Donald Trump as president, they voted for everyone that Donald Trump needs to execute his plans for the golden age of America. And that includes Bobby Kennedy, that includes Tulsi Gabbard, includes Pam Bondi. So both of these folks will go to the Senate floor for a full Senate vote now. We don't have exact timing on that, both Tulsi and RFK Jr. But the fight is not over. So Americans should keep calling their senators, and MAGA and MAHA be on full alert. We are still in this fight.
Now, the CAA is already being shaken up. It's become the first major national security agency to offer buyouts to its entire workforce. This is part of Trump's broad effort to shrink the federal government and shape it, I should say. Now, the offer tells federal employees that they can quit their jobs and receive roughly 8 months of pay and benefits. What's happening right now with the CIA?
Yeah, this is a huge announcement. I believe I read this very late last night, but it's a great move by President Trump to shrink the bloated federal bureaucracy, these three-letter agencies, Gabriella, that many Americans have not understood for so long what they actually do. We have so many questions as tax-paying citizens as to what actually goes on behind these three-letter agencies. Yeah. This move will save taxpayers like myself millions and make the CIA actually more efficient in the long run. So it's time to see some real reforms now. Kudos to President Trump and his team for taking on the swamp and winning. The MAGA agenda is already working.
It already is so fast. The White House has released a list of projects overseen by USAID and has identified the waste from this. It's just been wild to witness and see how much money has been wasted, thrown at left-wing projects right around the world. Elon Musk has been leading this, and he says that USAID is beyond repair. Here is Elon Musk.
What we have here is not an apple with a worm in it, but we have actually just a ball of worms. If you've got an apple and it's got a worm in it, maybe you can take the worm out. But if you've got actually just a ball of worms, it's hopeless. And USAID is a ball of worms. There is no apple. And when there is no apple, you've just got to basically get rid of the whole thing.
It seems like every day, every hour of every day, we're just getting new information and more evidence of how much money has been wasted on left-wing projects, that tax dollars were funding bioweapon research in Wuhan, including COVID-19. I mean, I just can't believe some of the things that have been exposed already. Caitlin, what's your take on it?
Yeah, there's so much being exposed and so many actions being taken every day by this new administration that the liberals and the mainstream media don't even know what to cry about first. So that's been quite interesting to listen to. But USAID has been completely unaccountable for decades. And I think your average American has been aware of that. It's been an agency that's run by bureaucrats with agendas who really believe that they answer to nobody, because they certainly didn't answer to us, tax-paying citizens. I think this is the age of awakening. There's also a spiritual component to a lot of the accountability that we're going to see over the next 4 years. Most of us have lived our whole lives in basically a carefully constructed Truman Show. That's really how the American people feel, especially after the past 4 years, where none of the institutions that you know, Gabriella, and you meet, the media, to public health, to the FBI, to the CIA, to universities, to NGOs, None of these agencies are actually what they appear to be. None of these institutions are actually what your average American thinks they are. It really feels like the Truman Show. This is going to be a huge awakening, and I can't even keep up myself.
I know, I agree with you. The truth is coming out. More and more of it is being revealed every day, and we are reporting on it right here. President Donald Trump, he's been signing plenty of executive orders, and he signed the No Men in Women's Sport executive order today, fulfilling one of his major campaign promises of keeping biological men out of women's sport. Now, Trump signed the order on National Girls and Women in Sports Day, which celebrates female athletes in women's sport and those who are committed to providing equal access to sports for all females. Here is Donald Trump.
Under the Trump administration, we will defend the proud tradition of female athletes, and we will not allow men to beat up, injure, and cheat our women and our girls. From now on, women's sports will be only for women.
Caitlin, just how much relief is there for the women of America?
A ton. This is a classic example of just promises made, promises kept, common sense policies, a common sense agenda. That is the reason Donald Trump won over the hearts of the American people. The American people rejected the left's attempt to sort of blur the basic biological truths. And today, the president delivered on another promise.
Spokeswoman for American Values, PAC, Caitlin Sinclair, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Great to speak with you. Joining us now is GOP pollster and Director of Political Strategy at Signal, Mitchell Brown. Mitchell, thank you for joining us. Look, Trump sent shockwaves around the world, announcing that he sees long-term US ownership of Gaza. He says the US will take over the Gaza Strip to rebuild it as a beautiful place.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. And everybody I've spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent.
It's a bold idea. Now, the president says that he wants peace in the region and he believes that the strength of America will be able to help bring about stability. But can I get your take on this? What's really going on behind the scenes here?
First, thanks for having me. Second, I think, like a lot of things Trump has done in these first 2 weeks here, it's using everything as a leverage tool for negotiations. End game here, this is a play at Iran. It's a terrorist proxy state funding everything that's going on in Gaza right now. So this is just sending a message to Iran. Trump also had some further statements about Iran here, but that's what this message was played to. So Trump doesn't actually have the intention of going in there and having U.S. military footprint in Gaza. This is just, again, drawing to a conclusion this conflict that Trump ran on. Trump said he was going to end the foreign wars there. So this is Trump pushing those kind of chips to the table, saying, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get the remaining hostages out, and we're going to close down the situation.
Earlier in the day, Trump unveiled an executive order reinstating a maximum pressure campaign against Iran. So Trump also made it clear that the US is not going to let Iran get nuclear weapons. What's your assessment of this? What are the geopolitical consequences of it?
I think the geopolitical consequences are a return to normalcy. We kind of have this seesaw that we have to get rid of. Obama obviously loosened all restrictions on Iran when he had his 8 years. Trump immediately came back in and applied this pressure that was then revoked again by Biden. What this pressure brought us was the Abraham Accords. It was countries coming to agreements with Israel that Trump fostered. It really is Iran that's driving this whole situation. Hezbollah, Hamas would not exist if it wasn't for the IRGC. This is what Trump knows. Trump was the first one to actually take action against Iran. Iran has a long history of funding different attacks amongst our troops in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. The killing of Soleimani showed what Trump's real initiative was to take on Iran. Here, we just have to go back to what we had in those previous 4 years under Trump, and from there we can build on those and really dismantle this regime.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called Trump the greatest friend that Israel has ever had in the White House. Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated his goals for the conflict and says that Trump's ideas for the region are worth pursuing.
You are the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House. And that's why the people of Israel have such enormous respect for you.
Look, the comments don't just show Donald Trump's strength, but they really expose Joe Biden's weakness here. What do you think?
Yeah, again, another thing, Trump has been America's greatest ally to Israel. A bunch of Republicans run on their support for Israel or their defense of Israel in the Middle East, but no one else has done what he did. He returned the embassy to Jerusalem. Again, he had the Abraham Accords. His relationship with Netanyahu is tried and true. Trump will continue to back Israel throughout this conflict and continue. I mean, you saw we've stopped all foreign aid except for aid to Israel and Egypt. Trump has no plans of backing away from this, and he's really been the only Republican president to deliver on these promises to the Israeli state.
Trump has withdrawn from the US from funding UNRWA, the UN agency that has deep links to terror, and there are calls for Australia to follow Trump's lead. But how significant is this announcement? What difference is it actually going to make in the Middle East?
Well, one, this sets a new stage. The UN has no right going into any place and telling it how to guide itself. The UN Human Rights Council, which China is a member of, can veto any movement. The UN needs to be completely restructured. We really should leave the UN. Trump has talked about it before. We fund too much of the UN. If we want to bring a world organization to the table for the West's interest, we need to be the sole provider of it. We need to pursue what is best for America and the West. And I guess Australia should follow suit here. We shouldn't be playing by rules made in Switzerland by countries that don't have our best interests at heart. So yes, the UNWRA, we all seen what they have done. They have been directly funding and aiding Hamas. They've been caught doing that. So again, removing funding there, I think Trump is going to take it a step further. I think we need to relook how America is invested in any of these organizations, whether it be the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, the UN, whatever it might be. We need to assess what is best for America and the West and not have to listen to other countries' ideas here.
Absolutely. Now, the Trump administration has begun flying detained illegal migrants from the US to Guantanamo Bay. Now, the move comes just days after Trump announced that he would instruct the Pentagon to prepare the facility to hold around 30,000 criminal illegal aliens at the US military base. Here he is.
Guantanamo Bay is there enough space there to accommodate?
There's a lot of space to accommodate a lot of people, yeah, so we're going to use it.
Can you talk a little bit
We have
about
it. It's already up. We have it for nothing.
Mitchell, what's your reaction?
Yeah, so currently one of the issues why we haven't seen the deportations at the scale the Trump admin would like right now is because of what we have in the detention facilities currently. We're sitting at the average across all the ICE detention facilities is 109%. Right now. So opening Guantanamo Bay for this allows us to place, again, 30,000 migrants at a time there and have the flights run out of Guantanamo. It's simply a logistical issue, and it's a much smarter decision than putting them at some of the larger U.S. military bases where we'd have to take land that's actually being used currently for military training and operations. Instead, we can use the Guantanamo where we have this facility that we are paying for that is sitting unused. So right now, it'll most likely just be a logistical stop in these people's return to the country of origin.
Just changing the vibe of things at the moment, I have to talk to you about what Joe Biden is up to. The former president has signed with a major Hollywood talent agency just weeks after leaving the White House. He signed up with Hollywood's Creative Artists Agency, CAA, which boasts A-list stars such as Ariana Grande and Brad Pitt on its books. I mean, I was pretty shocked to see that news. Is anyone going to be booking Joe Biden?
Hey, listen, I'm going to take a different take on this. Good for him. You know what I want to watch? I want to watch Joe Biden on a big screen stumbling over words a little bit more.
We haven't had enough of that.
No, like, again, I get enjoyment out of it. I want to see his stand-up special. But no, yeah, I mean, this is obviously probably what was worked out for Joe Biden beforehand. For him to step out of this presidency, I believe that he was offered things that were going to come to fruition for him and his family moving forward. So I'm sure Joe Biden's going to have a very busy couple years of jobs that don't require him to show up that were booked via CAA.
A GOP pollster and Director of Political Strategy at Signal, Mitchell Brown, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour.
Thank you for having me.
Meghan Markle has raised eyebrows for name-dropping her celebrity friends while helping out a young victim of the devastating Los Angeles wildfires. Riley Sullivan is a lifestyle reporter here at skynews.com.au and he's always across the latest headlines from the royal family. Riley, great to see you.
Great to be back.
Meghan Markle, she's taken to Instagram to thank pop star Billie Eilish for helping a fan impacted by the LA wildfires, but the clip has raised eyebrows. Let's just take a look.
Huge thank you, Billie Eilish. This is going to mean so much to her. And honestly, to Adam Levine and Bahati, you guys helped get this over the line. To everyone who's showing up for people in big and small ways to get through what's happened in California, just thank you so much. I'm going to go and email her mom now. Just wanted to share that with you guys.
What's the reaction been?
Yeah, you know, this is a mixed reaction. It was quite surprising, actually, because Meghan really doesn't post these types of candid videos.
Yeah.
So I think this is her maybe testing the waters a bit to see if people react more positively to a bit more of a candid style. While I do think it's sort of noble that she's helping out these wildfire victims, and she should be applauded for that, especially in terms of, you know, using her celebrity contacts to help out someone that's struggling and lost their whole, you know, all of their belongings and pretty much everything in this world. I mean, of course that's noble, but I do think there's just this thing with Meghan, you know, the name dropping, the celebrities. It just doesn't feel organic. And I kind of feel like, why did she need to post that? Like, obviously it's a great thing she did, but if she just left it at that and maybe kept it private, I mean, what a wonderful story. And maybe we would have found out later on organically.
Absolutely.
And it would have been a real moment for her. But I think the fact that her first reaction, she hasn't even sent the items yet to this young woman. She's posting them on Instagram and talking about Adam Levine and Billie Eilish. Like, there's just a disconnect there. And I think that this is sort of the core issue with the Sussex.
Absolutely. She doesn't like to keep much private, but then she likes to, you know, blame the media when she gets reported on. The mother of Princess Beatrice's stepson, Wolfie, has spoken out on social media days after Beatrice welcomed her second child. What did Wolfie's mother say, and why are some fans convinced that she was throwing a dig at Beatrice and her husband?
Yeah, this was interesting. So, of course, Beatrice welcomed her second child last week with her husband, Eduardo. The baby was born a few weeks ago, but obviously it was announced officially last week. And within days, Dara Huang, who is the mother of Beatrice's stepson, Wolfie, as you said, she posted this new interview on Instagram. It was an interview with Tatler, very much Society magazine. And in the caption, her caption was quite curious. She put in there basically that, you know, I'm opening up in this interview talking about being a single mum. And at the very end, she put, with no external support. And that was a little bit curious because, you know, as far as we know, there's a really great sort of blended family there with Dara, her son, and of course, Beatrice, Eduardo, and their daughters. But this was the first thing, I think, the first time that we've kind of thought, maybe there is, you know, something more to that in terms of the dynamic. Because, of course, you know, it would be complicated to have, you know, to share custody, I guess, of your son and you know, him being married to a member of the royal family. I don't know if the public's reading too much into it or if it is a hint that, you know, maybe it's not all that rosy. But Yeah, very interesting timing because it was just a few days after Beatrice gave birth.
Yeah, it sounds like pointed comments, doesn't it? Princess Catherine has marked World Camp today by sharing a new photo taken by none other than her son, Prince Louis. What was the message behind this photo of the princess?
Yeah, I thought this was so funny, and especially Prince Louis, I guess, budding photographer.
Yeah.
He's taken this photo. It's kind of, people are calling it like the scarecrow photo. They think that Kate looks a little bit scarecrow-like, but in a really cute way. Like it's such a a nice moment. And really, the message that Kate shared with the photo was to sort of appreciate the time, the good times, and appreciate and nurture yourself. I think it was very, very poignant, especially on World Cancer Day.
Absolutely. Prince Andrew is reportedly embarrassed by media coverage about the maintenance issues at the Royal Lodge. So why is the Duke of York so sensitive about his royal residence?
Yeah, this was a report that came out last week. Reportedly, friends of Prince Andrew have said that he is quite sensitive about the constant media coverage, including on this show, of Royal Lodge and the maintenance issues at Royal Lodge. I think that for him, it probably crystallises a lot of the humiliation he feels because of, he is living in disgrace, obviously, over his links to Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
That came up again recently in court because of this case with the Chinese spy. So, he's constantly in the press negatively on that front. And then I think having the stuff coming up about his house, I think it really crystallises for him a sense of humiliation. But, it's a choice. He is choosing to cling on to that property. He will not compromise. He will not consider taking on a smaller property. So I do think it's a case of, fair enough if Andrew wants to try and live in this amazing royal residence and hold on to it, but he's going to have to take the press and he's going to have to take the coverage.
Absolutely. Riley Sullivan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that is Power Hour. Thank you for your company. We'll see you next week. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.